What? What is that, Bear? What is it? We need to get solar? A Victron solar system? In this RV? I don't know that we can do it. Hey, thanks for tuning into our RV solar channel that you just heard from Bear there. He had a couple of things to say to me earlier. I guess he was a little camera shy. Now he's talking. Hey, come on, bud. What? Oh. Anyway, we're going to be putting an interesting Victron solar system in this Phoenix Cruiser. There it is. Yeah, hold on. We're sharing with our YouTube friends. Getting started a little bit later in the week, but hopefully we can still get this video out to you on time. So we're going to be putting a Victron solar system in this RV. It's going to be a little interesting because there's not a lot of storage in RVs like this. Let me show you what we're putting in and how I think we're going to have to do it. Don't worry about this battery compartment here. I did not rip that cover off. It fell off on the highway, I guess. But we're going to be pulling the batteries out of here, and sadly, we're not going to be able to put batteries back in there. I think we could fit as some SOK batteries in there, but the problem is this particular customer, they like to go out in January, and they're Minnesota, and we're Minnesota, and we all know what Minnesota is about. Normal Januaries. This last January was not bad. Normally, you got some way below zero temperatures. All right, so the tricky part with this is we're going to be installing a lot of it in this custom cabinet that they had built. Normally they have a table that comes out here. So we're going to be trying to make it work in that tiny spot. And we're going to have to get really creative to make that work. Then on this side, I know it's a little hard to see, we're going to be using this space underneath the refrigerator for the batteries. And we may, let's see if we can use a drill light here. There we go. You can kind of see what's going on in there. We'll pull out that subwoofer and that little inverter. There's plenty of room in there. I think we'll make that work. What I don't like about this is it is not very accessible, and that's something that we're huge about. You got to be able to access and maintain your stuff, but it is what it is. The other side of accessibility and I don't know if I'd call it doing things by the book, but is being pragmatic about things. How, a perfect solution that can't be installed doesn't make sense because it can never be used. There is an outside chance that if the SOKs don't fit in there, we may end up building a custom battery. We'll see how that goes. We haven't done that in a while. For our new viewers, we have in the past built our own custom batteries. Maybe I'll show a picture somewhere overlaid while I'm talking about it. We really like doing them. It's just that the prices on batteries like the SOKs that are serviceable, I would say they're kind of straddling the pros and cons of the DIY battery versus an off-the-shelf battery, where it just really doesn't make sense to do it from an economic perspective, but it definitely makes sense to do it when you're most limited by a budget on space, not on money. We had to make a couple of changes to what we typically do, all right? This is a 1/2-inch piece of plywood here. Normally we use 3/4. Reason for that is we don't have the room depth-wise. Another change we're making is to make this die-hole breaker that we've been using lately, make it actually work here. We actually mounted it directly to the links, and that required shaving off a little bit of the terminal, but as you can see, here's the negative. It's so beefy. There's plenty of room there. I'm not worried about that. We will run the thermal tests with the FLIR camera like usual. I don't expect to see any issues here. And then, of course, the shunt right on the negative. I think this is so efficient on space. Next, we're going to have, this is where we're really getting crazy. I built these, I made some aluminum standoff brackets to make a double-decker Victron deal. So we're going to put the Cerbo right on top of there. Makes sense to everybody? I think that's going to be pretty sweet. And we'll run it all through here. We'll pre-wire all this up, and it's going to save a ton of headache and trouble by doing that. wire up as much as we can here, then take that and install it on the back wall. I'll probably have to mark it first, and then we'll be good to go there. But then the other tricky part here is, move this out of the way a little bit. We're gonna have to go through the floor over here, go down the floor, and then come up over here for both the large DC cables and the AC cables to feed the panel. And again, typically what we want to be doing is putting the batteries as close as we can to the charger, the Multiplus, because that's the largest load. But you know, we're using 4-aught, not 4 gauge, 4-aught. It's super big. Let me remind everybody how thick this is. This is it. It's like my thumb. Okay? That's thick stuff. It can handle the load without a problem, and we'll probably end up having to protect it on both ends because it's going to travel underneath the RV. But this is what we got to do to make it work, make it happen for these people. They are going out to Alaska. That's going to be a super fun trip. I'm super jealous. I wish I could be going, but I'm going to have a good time making their dreams come true. So speaking of, if you want us to help your dreams come true, check us out at sotasolar.com, SOTASOLAR.com, or just subscribe and you can follow along as other people's dreams come true. And you can learn and do it yourself. All right, we are putting this board together and we're about ready to do some programming. Got the Multiplus 3000 2x120 wired up, at least the DC side. I took a minute and yeah, routed those through here, labeled our links. I like doing that when I'm thinking about it. One, it reminds me of where things should go, but it also gives an indication as to, you know, what appropriate fuses are and that sort of stuff. Although those really are determined by your wire size. Let's take a moment to talk about that real quick. A lot of people get confused as to what fuse size they should use with certain wire size. A lot of times they start fixating on the appliance or the device. They might say, oh, this device uses 50 amps, therefore I need a 50 amp fuse. 19 out of 20 times that's not the case, okay? You should use fusing recommendations by the manufacturer. In this case, let's take the example of the Victron Multiplus 3000. Victron recommends a 400 amp fuse. So our 400 amp fuse means we need wire that is capable of handling 400 amps, which is 4-aught cable. That's where we get that's why we use this, because fuse size determines cable size. And Victron also recommends 4-aught cable. There are some instances and maybe some cases that you could get away with 2-aught cable. As for me and my customers, we're going with 4-aught. But then on the other ones, let's say like the 50 amp solar charger here, which I know it's tough to, well, you can't really read any of it. We use 6 gauge wire and we use an 80 amp fuse. Because we don't want, the reason why we don't use a 50 or 60 amp fuse is we don't want it to pop under normal operation. And this wire is capable of handling up to that. When it gets up to around 80, we definitely want it to pop. So to recap, your fuse size is determined by your wire size. Your wire size is determined by your loads that you will generally see. Okay, so 300, 400 amps potentially, 4-aught. As you get down into 200 amps, 2-aught's just fine. As you get into, you know, 100, 2 gauge is just fine. Like a 100 amp solar charger, we will use a 125 amp fuse and 2 gauge wire. You always want your fuse sizes a little bit higher than your working amps. Otherwise, you're going to be blowing fuses all the time, and you don't want to be doing that. All right, glad we had this talk. Okay, a couple other little things. A lot of times we will put the DC breaker, or the solar breaker, we'll put that up here somewhere in its own separate box with a cover like this. But I got to thinking about it a little bit more, and we're all about accessibility, maintainability. Here's what we got going on. Check this out. Although it's got to be moved over a little bit, but you get the idea. Now the customer is going to be able to operate this from here. Again, I'm going to have to move that, okay? Let's not stress about that right now. All right, I love the raceway, but sometimes it's a pain to get off. Come on. right, this guy just needs to be moved over that way a little bit. It'll be good. Okay. But where this is going to be installed in there, pretty much everything, there's something covering right here. So if I put the breaker there, the customer's not going to be able to operate it. Breakers only make sense and fuses only make sense when you can change them, when you can operate them. Otherwise, doesn't make sense. I don't like that. Okay. Again, yeah, we got all this screwed down. All right, been hard at work here, getting the board secured to the wall. Actually, I've only got one screw securing it so far because I'm not quite sure. Well, I'm pretty sure this thing will fit on there. We did have to notch out this here. It looks like we've got a little bit of cleanup to do on that. But yeah, working with this custom cabinet was a little tricky, but I think that'll work out real good. I got holes cut down here. Got the daylight there. What's going to be going up and down there is, well, quite a few wires. Power, AC power, DC power, and I think some more DC lines. Like, that thing's going to be pretty darn full. And then, over here, here's where our battery compartment is looking. It's actually quite a bit of room. Now remember, at one point we were trying to put everything in here, but we've just pivoted to just the batteries. Okay. And to make that work, because there's too much stuff on the floor, made myself a board to lift it up and let the cables run through underneath. We've done this on Airstreams quite a bit, but why not reuse the method, huh? So I've got one of the D-rings secured. I'm not going to secure the other one until I get the batteries in there, so that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, somehow I got those two batteries through this hole, and they're in there. And some eagle eye viewers might see that I have a fuse holder there. That is to protect it from this side, because it's going to go. The wire is going to go down there underneath. Quick review, and then it's going to go into our main disconnect breaker there. So we're kind of protected on both ends, but simply because it was going underneath there, I wanted to be extra safe. So and then this is good and taut. Well, I don't know what note that would be, but it sounds a little flat. Okay, I think it's probably time to start running some cable now. This is the look of a man who's been working at this for a while, sweating a little bit, maybe grumbling a little bit. Let me show you everything I've done. It's about 11 o'clock. Been at this for a while. Let's see where we're at. Let's step inside, shall we? All right, we've got this up on the wall. I don't remember if we mentioned that or not. The difference is it is wired now, which is good. Now, the only thing we have left to add is the solar wires on this, and then this will be complete. I really like the way this turned out. We did do a quick test fit on this, and I think it'll slide right on there without a problem. Now, where I've been sweating and grumbling is over here. Oh my gosh. This was a challenge, let me tell you. Look at how tight the tolerance is on this right here. The back of that box, that power center, came right up to the batteries. I did not plan that. We call that a happy accident, just like Bob Ross. But we got our two SOK batteries in here. How crazy is that? So they are inside. They are heated, but what better way to keep them even better protected than having them inside here. And this was all wasted space before anyway. I really like this. This is pretty darn cool. So, got that in there. Got that on that board, strapped down. We even, if you look way back there, we've got a surge guard that we installed. And I think the monitor is going to go right up there in that spot where the old Xantrax controller was, because we're not going to need that anymore. That was quite a bit. Tomorrow, I'm hoping to actually give power to the system. I have to talk to the customer and figure out exactly where their power cord is. Maybe I don't have the key. I'm not sure. Which is one reason why I'm charging these batteries with a, yeah, there it is, a lab power supply because I don't have their power cord, and the system in there is getting to about 11.5 volts. The lithium system is going to come online probably tomorrow, like I said. These batteries here are going to come out, so I'll have to make those connections to the main system. So, oh, I lied about the only two wires. Solar comes in there, and then the DC mains also come in there. But after that, we're good to go. It is coming along. Pretty dark out here in the CDN now then. We're getting a little later start here on Saturday, but maybe it's because Zuki's bobbing for... What are you bobbing for there, bud? Let's go a little... Oh, these boys. They're so funny. Well, welcome back to extended edition here. Soda Solar working on the Phoenix Cruiser there. We'll get to that here in just a second. Just chatting with these boys here a little bit. It's getting a little warm up here in Minnesota, so we got some ways for these boys to stay cool. And as some of you know, I'm a little bit of a... I like to barbecue a little bit. So, oh, our temp's getting a little lower than I'd like. But these are coming out all right. We're doing a pork shoulder and some ribs on this Saturday. What do you think, boys? They're keeping an eye on it. They're keeping noses on it. Like I said, thanks for sticking around. You're still here. You're a true Soda Solar nut. I don't know. All right, we've been working here for a bit. Batteries are out. They're there. Hey, bud. Yeah, so we are now running off of the system we've put together. Let's take a look at some of the other things we did. We've got the Cerbo display here mounted. The old Xantrax monitor was there. It fit right in that same hole. I didn't even have to cut anything. So that's good to go there. Something I wanted to mention here real quick with how we're doing these now. I think we might almost abandon the dedicated USB line that we had been using for a long time. And we're going to replace it with just this. A couple of the last videos we use these. This is just a standard. It takes, looks like 12 to 24 volts in, and it gives you a USB power out. Because the Cerbo display here, the USB on this is only for power. It does not pass any data through it. The HDMI actually carries the touch data. So that saves us having to run the HDMI down here, out there, in there. And now that we're here, I want to chat about this real quick too. You can see I cut a cord there, and that is for the converter. And how I figured out which one the converter one was is I followed it up from the converter up there. Now, some of the more modern RVs, there's just a plug on the back you can unplug on these power converter boxes, and that's what I'd recommend you do. Or if there's a dedicated breaker, just flip that breaker off. All right, we've been working here for a bit. Batteries are out. They're there. Hey, bud. Yeah, so we are now running off of the system we've put together. Let's take a look at some of the other things we did. We've got the Cerbo display here mounted. The old Xantrax monitor was there. It fit right in that same hole. I didn't even have to cut anything. So that's good to go there. And something I wanted to mention... Something I wanted to mention here real quick with how we're doing these now. I think we might almost abandon the dedicated USB line that we had been using for a long time. And we're going to replace it with just this. A couple of the last videos we use these. This is just a standard. It takes, looks like 12 to 24 volts in, and it gives you a USB power out. Because the Cerbo display here, the USB on this is only for power. It does not pass any data through it. The HDMI actually carries the touch data. So that saves us having to run the HDMI down here, out there, in there. And now that we're here, I want to chat about this real quick too. You can see I cut a cord there, and that is for the converter. And how I figured out which one the converter one was is I followed it up from the converter up there. Now, some of the more modern RVs, there's just a plug on the back you can unplug on these power converter boxes, and that's what I'd recommend you do. Or if there's a dedicated breaker, just flip that breaker off. But how you can tell if that's something you need to do is look at your AC loads when you've got nothing else on. In this case, we were at 250 watts is what we were using. And so what was happening was our battery system was going through the inverter, and then the inverter sending power to the converter, which is basically a fancy name for a battery charger, and charging the batteries from power that came from the batteries. You can see how that's a cycle. It's a circle. And it'll eventually drain your system, so you want to make sure you unplug that. Yes, Suzuki. He really likes that ball. He wants me to throw it. When I'm done talking to the YouTube friends, we'll do that, okay, bud? Oh, what's this? You want that, bud? The door's open. Let's see if we can hit it. Nope. Okay. So the last major thing we're going to do is run some solar wires from that vent up there and run those down and through here and run those all the way underneath and up into the solar box. And then we can start cleaning all this up and put it together, and actually pull this out. Quick reminder, no solar panels. So no solar panels on here yet. We're waiting on those coming on a truck. Just Merlin panels are really hard to get a hold of. If you need some, I'd recommend you check out Dave at 4th D Solar. That's who we use to get them. Feel free to drop us, refer us. Maybe he'd see fit to give us better deals in the future. Who knows? But they are expensive, and they do take a long time to get. So keep that in mind if you are using them. But they are, as far as flexible panels go, I'm told they are pretty much best of the best. That being said, if it were up to me, I would still use the rigid ones. But everyone has different levels of comfort and what they want to do with their RV, and we are all about that. Ultimately, this is yours. You have to live with it, and we are just trying to make your dreams come true, whatever that may be. Okay? I got to get back to work. All right, we're closing in on it. I'm just about as far as I can go, and I wish I could have went a little bit further, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But yeah, we got our solar run all the way under there. Got a little 100 watt panel up there just sitting there, so that way I could determine the polarity of the wires. So like these two solar wires here, they're just both black, so you don't know what they are. But I do have spray foam in there. Got that curing. Got spray foam in the hole under there. I got that secured now, so you're just gonna have to trust me. Got spray foam in here. Let's see, can we see that? It's a little tough, it's a little dark. This is what I want to talk about here. Take a seat right here. I'm gonna have to chat with the customer and see how we want to handle this. Got a little bit of a conundrum. I kind of goofed a little bit when I was planning out my board. You know, my sweet double-decker idea up there, right? Well, that double-decker is hitting this, so I can't, this won't go up against the wall now. So, yeah, we'll have to chat about that, exactly what the plan is. But other than that, everything's working great. So I don't mean to leave you hanging on this one, but if you want to see how it concludes, you're going to have to check out part 2. I do want to get this video out with what we do have. We appreciate you sticking around, following along on our journey, and putting solar and Victron equipment into RVs, campers, ice houses, whatever you got. We're doing it. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye. Up there yet, we're waiting on those.